أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى يوم الدين. It is a pleasure being here, dear brothers, dear sisters. It is a pleasure being here. And alhamdulillah, we are blessed with another occasion of speaking about Quran and Hadith on such an important night, the eve of Friday. We're going to be talking about today an important question. That is that when we look at one of the famous letters of Imam Ali alayhi salam in Nahj-al-Balagha, letter 31, which has been advised from our Maraja Taqleed, for example, Ayatollah Sistani, to read this and to contemplate and imagine as Imam Ali alayhi salam is giving you advice himself. In this very important letter, which is attributed that he wrote this letter to Imam Hassan alayhi salam, but because of some of the lines that are far from the high position of isma and infallibility, we say in general that this letter is from Imam Ali, is in general a father, in the advice of a father to his son or to a son. So the line that we're going to talk about today is this, that in this letter Imam Ali alayhi salam in Nahj-al-Balagha says and writes, "Ahyi qalbaka bil maw'idah," enliven your heart with admonition, with advice. وَأَمِتْهُ بِالزَّهَادَةِ وَأَمِتْهُ بِالزَّهَادَةِ, and kill it with asceticism. And some other version says وَأَمِتْهُ بِالزُّهُدِ, with asceticism. وَقَوِّهِ بِالْيَقِينِ, and strengthen it with certainty. وَنَوِّرْهُ بِالْحِكْمَةِ, and enlighten it with his wisdom. So in this advice that we have from Imam Ali alayhi salam, 4 things we're instructed to do. One is to give life to our hearts with advice. One is to kill our hearts with disdaining from the world. The third is to strengthen our hearts with certainty. And the fourth is to enlighten our hearts, give nur and light to our hearts with wisdom. When you look at the different faculties that man has, and for us to truly understand how we can give life to our heart, and at the same time we can give death and kill our hearts, we have to understand that man has 3 parts to him. One is you could divide and say he has a body. 2, he has a part of him that is a part of awareness and knowledge and understanding. And the third is a part of inclination, meaning that his desires are there, his emotions are there. When we love somebody, when we have hate, when we get angry, this is part of that inclination. So we have these 3 parts. So this helps us understand how can Imam Ali alayhi salam talk about killing the heart, but at the same time giving life to it. How does that work? So let's divide these 3 parts and understand what is meant by the heart here. We have to understand that the heart is also divided into, when you look at some of the verses of the Quran, when you look at some of the hadith also, that the heart is not only a place that resides the emotions in hadith. First of all, let me make this clear, that the heart is not, when we talk about the heart, and it's not that organ that is pumping blood, in the cardiovascular system throughout the body. We're not talking about that heart. And the Quran does not talk about, when it talks about al-qalb or al-fu'ad or as-sadr or these words, it doesn't talk about this, this organ, this muscle. It is talking about one of these 2, that knowledge that we have, or you can say that it comes from those emotions that we have, those inclinations. So one of these 2. Some of the verses in the Quran talk about the second part, that the heart is a faculty for us to see. So ma kadhaba al-fu'ad ma ra'a, we have in the Quran, Surah Najm, that the heart does not lie what it sees. Fu'ad, or chest, or heart. So you understand here that you're talking about a heart that is watching, a heart that is observing. So what kind of part of the human body would it be, or the human existence of humans would it be? It would be part of that part that takes knowledge. So we're understanding that the heart here, that refers to knowledge, and it can see and it can witness. So keep this in mind to answer this question: how can we kill our heart, and how can we give life to our heart? Then we also have in hadith, for example, Imam Ali alayhi salam, when asked about, do you see your Lord? And he doesn't talk about seeing the Lord with the eyes, he talks about seeing the Lord with the heart. So that heart is like the eye, it sees. That heart is also like the ear, it hears. So it's a place where there is cognition and ma'rifat and understanding. And of course, its way is a little different. It's different than just seeing through the eyes. It sees through knowledge by presence. And it is a metaphysical viewing of truths of this world. So we have Imam Ali say, لا تدركه العيون بمشاهدة العيان ولكن تدركه القلوب بحقائق الإيمان. Eyes do not see with witnessing Allah. The hearts see it and witness Him and grasp Allah, or witness Him with the reality of Iman, with the reality of faith. So therefore, this is the first part of the heart. So we need to understand what the qalb is here, because this is the place where Imam Ali alayhi salam is saying to do four things: give life to it, give death to it, strengthen it, and give light to it. So we have to see which part each one refers to. So when we look at the heart, and we see that this heart has the ability to see, according to these verses of the Quran, according to this hadith that I just mentioned. But as long as this heart is a qalb al-salim, is a heart that can be intact, is not marad, as how the Quran says, fi qulubihim maradun fazadahum Allahu marada. Some people, their hearts are sick. So the issue is, we have this great faculty of a heart that witnesses, and as long as we increase our spirituality, and as we increase our connection to God, it becomes alive. And also at the same time, it begins to see and witness more. So this is one fact of the heart, and one part of the heart. Then when we also look at the state of the heart, we also see that in verses of the Quran, it talks about the heart as being a state. And that third part that I'm mentioning, the emotions, inclinations, and as a state. We have verses in the Quran, لِيُنذِرَ مَنْ كَانَ حَيًّا وَيُحِقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ. So you have that this is a dhikr, this is a Quran to give advice. It gives advice to those that are haya, that have hayat, those that are alive. And those, so, that will be able to give the truth and tell the truth. So we have verses here that talk about the heart being a status. إِنَّكَ لَا تُسْمِعُ الْمَوْتَى. You cannot make hear those that are dead. So the heart here is a status, that there are those whose hearts are dead. Even the Prophet of Islam cannot give them advice, cannot waken them up. So keep this in mind so far, that we want to answer this question: how can we give life and death to the heart? What should we do? So we're going to continue and put these together. So therefore, when you look at these hadith together, and look at this advice of Imam Ali alayhi salam together, and you see أحيا قلبك بالموعظة, we could say that this kind of ihya of maw'idha, of giving life, can go back to the knowledge part, inclination. It will be talked about later on. So give your heart, you can say, life, that knowledge that it needs. Or later on when we say nawwirhu bil hikmah, give it that knowledge that it needs with hikmah, with wisdom. But when we talk about wa'amithu bil zahada, we're talking more about that inclination part of the heart. That the heart is like a coin that has two parts. It has a rahmani inclination part, and also has a shaitani inclination. So therefore it inclines towards good, kamal, towards God, and at the same time it inclines towards evil, and inclines towards animalistic traits or animalistic desires or lower desires. So therefore when we talk about wa'amithu biz-zahada or az-zuhd, kill your heart with asceticism, with zuhd, with disdainment of the world. It's about that part of the heart, which is the inclination part, and that part of the spirit that is inclining towards the evil. So very beautifully, Imam Ali alayhi salam is giving us advice to give a true life to ourselves, to give life to ourselves and that heart that sees and is present and has connection to God. Just how you feel in the month of Ramadan, or when you go to ziyarat, or when you go to Hajj, for example, inshallah, you feel your heart is more alive and you see your heart is more present and you're witnessing more truths. So yes, sometimes throughout the year, that heart will turn maybe, and it will be less alive because we're busy with our day-to-day schedules. But sometimes, let's say in the month of Rajab, Sha'ban, Ramadan, and Muharram, inshallah, we just passed Fatimiyya. Also in these times is a time where our heart becomes more alive. So give ihya to your heart, give it life with mu'adda. So this is about the place of where Imam Ali alayhi salam, first of all, is giving these 4 pieces of advice. Now, what is his advice exactly? The first advice that he is giving is to give advice to yourselves, which is itself, an advice. To give ihya of your heart, to give it life with mu'adha. What is mu'adha? What does mu'adha mean? Admonition, advice. We have different types of advice. We have different types of mu'adha in the Quran. When you look at the verses, you see that the Quran itself talks about and introduces itself as being in mu'adha. Ya ayyuhan nas qad ja'atkum maw'idhatun min rabbikum. O mankind, there has come to you instruction, advice. So the Quran is mu'adha. So Imam Ali says, give life to your heart with mu'adha. Meaning read the Quran, you could say, understand the Quran, have a connection with the Quran. When you read in the Quran, your life, when you have rust on your heart, that rust will be gone, you will cleanse yourself, and your heart will be how it should be again, and will be witnessing and intact, and will be inshallah qalb as-salim, an intact and sound heart. Or we have from hadith. The hadith are also advice because they are the explanation of the Quran. They are light and they are nur. Kalamukum nur, we see in, for example, Ziyara al-Jami'ah. So they give life to your heart with advice. So the issue that we have as brothers and sisters is that a lot of times we are so busy with the routine that we have, and we do not have a daily input of instruction or advice for ourselves. We go throughout the day, throughout the week sometimes, and we don't have a place for our hearts to become alive again. When you listen to the Quran, your heart will become alive again. When you listen to the hadith, your heart will become alive again. When you listen to, we can say, speeches from the ulama, from scholars, our hearts will be alive again. The key point is to learn from this letter and to apply it we're looking at the practical implication of this letter, and to have for ourselves at least a weekly routine of having mu'adha for ourselves, having advice. And this hadith itself is advice. The best situation would be all the time to have advice, all the time to listen to majalis or speeches, or all the time to read hadith or to read Quran. This would be the best. When you look at some of the countries where there are some of the areas where there's a masjid that is close by, one of the benefits of having Salat Jama'at together, nightly or daily, is that you can listen to advice. The seminary that I went to in Tehran first with Sheikh Ahmad al-Mushtaidi, every night he would have hadith written on the board. Every night there would be mu'adha. Every night. Imagine how much that influences you, because you get a piece of advice, something to work for every night, and you get nur and light, and your heart becomes alive again. Compare that to separating ourselves from these programs, from these majalis. What would happen then? And this is one of the things that we're trying to do, is to reestablish this dua that we have. And the nights of Friday, this Thursday night program that we have. So this is advice for us once a week at least. And inshallah, those that attend classes and learn more, they'll have more chance to have their hearts to be alive. Because if you do not give your heart something to refresh it with, to give life to it again, it's going to be, again, stacked up with all those material and a lot of times useless thoughts that we have. The second thing that we can talk about is the Quran talks about it being a mu'adha. The Quran also talks about ud'u ila sabil rabbik bil hikmah wal maw'idha al hasana. Invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good instruction. So when we give advice, and we're going to get into this part, not only is advice and maw'idha limited to the Quran, it is also advice that your brother gives to another brother, a sister gives to the sister, parents give to their children, and community members give to their own community members. Is not only limited to the Quran, not only limited to reciting hadith, that we are supposed to, when you give instruction or advice, and I know that we live in a time period where they say live and let live. You shouldn't, if you want to, for example, prohibit alcohol and say alcohol is bad, or for example, wear hijab or do whatever, practice your religion, okay, you're fine. But you don't have the right to tell me what to do. You don't have the right to instruct me. I want to live this way. I want to live however I want to live. So one of the issues that we have is when we want to give advice, and we know that all the religion of Islam, its instructions are based on maslahat, based on good. And you care for someone so much that you want them to become a better person and you're fearing for them. So we have to give advice and always guide people because we have social duties. It's not a religion that we're only focusing on practicing salat for our reciting salat or reciting Quran by ourselves and not caring about others. The hadith has this very beautifully. The hadith has this, that man ra'a akhahu ala amrin yakrahuhu falam yarudda an wa huwa yaqdiru alayhi faqad khana. Imam Salih in Bihar has a man who observes bad behavior in his brother without forbidding him from it, while he is able to do so, has indeed betrayed him. Many times we see our own friends, you see that they're going in a path that is dangerous. If you have the ability and you have that influence, or in society in general and whole, if you have that ability and you see sin and you see corruption and you see injustice, therefore you do not want to betray your nation. You don't want to betray your community. You don't want to betray your brother. You give them advice. So first of all, it's necessary for us to give advice and receive advice. We should be inviting ourselves to, inshallah, advice. Second of all, the way that we give advice is very important. Sometimes we have to be very careful in general. We have to be very careful. I don't want to give a green light to everyone here to go investigate everyone's lives and see, okay, who's married, who's not married, who has kids, who doesn't have kids. Are you married? Are you not married? How come you don't have more kids? How come you're doing this in your life? Why don't you do this? See, sometimes we have a lot of people that they're more curious about other people's lives and they always just want to give advice to others. We're not talking about that. We're talking about sincere maw'idha. Sincere maw'idha that if it's not given, it's considered as khiyanat or betrayal. So the hadith tells us to be very careful in the way that we do hadith, the way that we give advice. Look at this hadith from Imam Ali alayhi salam. Man wa'adha akhahu sirran faqad zana. How beautiful it is. Whoever gives advice, advises his brother in private, adorns him, has done zinat of him, adorns him. وَمَنْ وَعَدَهُ عَلَانِيَةً فَقَدْ شَانَ. And whoever advises him publicly makes him look bad. We all have been in a situation where we either got called out, either sometimes maybe by our friends, our parents, our spouses even, and they have done constructive criticism, but in front of everyone. and we have become ashamed, and it is hurtful for us. So we are looking at, when you're giving advice, that person that gives advice, that person that receives advice, there is akhlaq in it. You see those stories of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, of doing wudu at a young age and correcting a person's wudu, not by yelling at them or shouting at them, by asking that person, am I doing wudu correctly? And the person says, oh, your wudu is correct, mine is wrong. So we have to be very careful on the way that we, in general, we don't push people away from our communities, especially sometimes those that are a little older. We have a lot of experience, which is very good, but we don't want to keep our masajid and centers a place where someone doesn't feel comfortable that you're giving advice to them all the time and this is a green light. No, this is for situations where you sincerely care about that person and you're keeping the best etiquette about how to inform this person of a mistake they're doing. So we have advice from the brothers, advice, say sisters for sisters and brothers for brothers or whatever. Now we have also, besides the Quran being maw'adah for us, we also have the hadith being maw'adah for us, and we have our brothers being maw'adah for us. We also have in the hadith that our nafs, our own self, becomes advice for us. Look at from this hadith from Imam Jawad alayhi salam, that you live your life in a way that you're giving yourself, replenishing hayat, giving hayat to yourselves, life to yourself, by your own maw'adah. You give maw'adah to yourself. Imam Jawad in Tuhaf al-Uqul talks about this hadith. Al-mu'min yahtaj ila thalatha khisal. A mu'min needs three things, three attributes. Tawfiqan min indallah. Tawfiqan min Allah. He needs tawfiq. He needs success, meaning that if God does not give him success, he can have the most resources, the best plan, but if Allah does not want that to happen, it won't. He needs that tawfiq. He needs that success from God. وَوَاعِدٍ مِّن نَفْسِهِ. Also, he needs a wa'id, someone that gives advice, an advisor from his own self. And that from your own self, you'll get a call that will be instructing you, especially when it comes to wajibat and muharramat, to stay away. That is a sin of God, that is a sin. When it comes to salat, your salat is becoming late now. Do not disobey your Lord. Or when it comes to mustahabat, or you're used to doing certain du'as and it becomes a good habit for us, so don't forget about this du'a today. You have a voice inside you. You have a wa'idin min nafsin. You have someone inside instructing you all the time what to do when it comes to wajibat, muharramat, or actions that we have. So the fourth category is ourselves. We have advice that is from ourselves. وَقَبُولٍ مِّمَّنْ يَنْسَحُ. And acceptance from that person that is giving that advice. So not only are we looking for advice from ourselves, but qabul. You have to also be receiving of that advice so that it can change you. Sometimes if we're not qualified and that heart is not qualified, is blocked from the barriers that we have. A person can give you advice all day. A prophet of God can come. A holy imam can come and give you, like we have a Lady Fatima, she gives a speech, and the Fadakiyah, one of the most beautiful speeches, eloquent speeches, and meaningful speeches in the history of Islam. And the people of Medina, they don't do anything much. They don't do. Why? Because that preparation comes from the spirit, from the soul. It has to be prepared. So when it hears that advice, it jumps, it acts. So this is the first part of this beautiful letter of Imam Ali. Ahyi qalbaka bil maw'adha. Give life to yourselves with advice. Surround yourself with Quran, hadith, speeches, books, Islamic material, and give it to your heart, and you have life, inshallah. You give it a better life. You have more hayat, spiritual life. وَأَمِتْهُ بِالزَّهَادَةِ. And at the same time, kill it, but we said not that part of the heart that goes back to knowledge. Kill that part that goes back to desires, but not the good desires, the evil desires. Kill the evil desires. And this, you could say, is part of the heart. Those inclinations that we have towards imperfection, those animalistic inclinations. Zuhd, brothers and sisters, does not mean not to have. There's a beautiful story that explains what Zuhd has. One of our scholars by the name of Mullah Ahmad al-Naraqi, he has the famous work of Mi'raj al-Sa'adah. And he lived around, say, 300 years ago. He died around 1245. And he was a mujtahid, a jurist, and also an akhlaqi scholar. He once was in these public showers that they had. They didn't have plumbing and fresh water in your homes like they have now. They would go to a public bath. And there he saw the darwish, he saw a Sufi. And the Sufi criticized him, criticized Mullah Ahmad al-Naraqi about that you talk about akhlaq, but you are, affected by the world. You are attached to the world, to the dunya. And Mullah Ahmad al-Naraqi wanted to teach him a lesson, and he wanted sometimes to give advice by your actions. And that is the best way. That is the best way. So he says, let's go to Karbala. Bismillah. Right now they're in the hour. Imagine you're in the shower, and right after you come out, let's go from Naraq or wherever he was in Iran. Let's go to Karbala. And they go. They start going. So okay, let's go. He goes, and then this person, the dervish, forgets his kashkul. He forgets the beggar bowl that is carried by dervishes to get gifts and money. And he forgets this and says, and right at the beginning, oh, I forgot my kashkul. Oh, I forgot my kashkul. He said, and you have to go back and get my kashkul. So here, Mullah Naraqi gives him his advice. He says, look, I have wealth that Allah has given me. I have horses. He could have taken his horse and went to have horses. I have sheep. I have different, things that I have. But I put them all in the trust of God. But you have, so I have money, I have capital, I have wealth, but I'm not attached to it. But you can't even let go of your kashkul, your bowl. So you are attached. You have one bowl, and that is your only possession, but you're attached to it. I have all this wealth, and I just left it to go to Karbala. So we look at these examples of asceticism and zuhd, meaning not to be in general, not to be happy when we gain material possessions, and I'm telling myself, and not to be sad when we lose these material possessions. This is what zuhd is, when you don't have attachment to it. وَأَمِتْهُ بِالزَّهَادَ, with zuhd, with not being attached to the world, kill your heart. So at the same time, we're giving life to it with mu'adha, and at the same time, we're killing it with this part, with those inclinations that are animalistic, those inclinations that are towards evil, that are towards just attached to the world. But you can say, again, even if it's for the world, and if you work for the world, for your family, to serve Allah, with that intention, that is not dunya, that is akhirah. You're working hard. That's good. MashaAllah, that's good, and that's akhirah. But just to want the dunya for what it is and to be attached. Now let's go about these final lines of this letter, inshallah, and we'll do dua. وَقَوِّهِ بِالْيَقِينِ. So strengthen your iman with yaqeen. Strengthen your heart with yaqeen. When we look at what the heart needs, we could say that here how to strengthen your heart. A heart that reaches its completion and gets what it needs and those substances that it needs, that is a healthy heart. That is a strong heart. A heart that doesn't have what it needs or anything, that will become weak and fragile. So what does the heart need? It needs certainty. It needs knowledge. It needs those things that take it into knowledge. It needs certainty. That knowledge that can strengthen it. So وَقَوِّهِ بِالْيَقِينِ, with yaqeeni knowledge, strengthen your heart. Give yourself the strongest of proofs for religion. Research and think about it. Give yourself the strongest of proofs. Give yourself the strongest of knowledge by, you can say, in presence even. And this way will strengthen your heart. So you're looking at information or knowledge, either acquired by reading and studying, or that knowledge that is acquired by, or the spiritual journey that we have, that strengthens your heart. And you'll see, after you have knowledge, after you have proofs, after you reach a lot of high levels of knowledge, then your heart will have become strengthened, inshallah. And that's the heart that you need to continue your spiritual journey with knowledge. وَنَوِّرْهُ بِالْحِكْمَةِ, and give light to it. Make your heart, you can have a heart that has light and a heart that's full of darkness with hikmah. And hikmah, is something that is strong. Hikmah, a lot of times the mufassirin here talk about hikmah as being practical wisdom, that knowledge and that you have, that wisdom that you have when it comes to your actions and your way of life. That there are a set of yaqini or certain knowledge that we have, and that knowledge creates us to have hikmah, and it changes our behavior. You can look at, for example, verses in the Quran, how beautifully in the Quran it talks about those that are alive, those hearts that are alive, and those hearts that are dead. أَوَمَنْ كَانَ مَيْتَةً فَأَحْيَيْنَاهُ, those is he who was dead, and we gave life to him. So we have a dead heart and a heart that's alive, or a person that's alive. وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُ نُورًا يَمْشِي بِهِ فِي النَّاسِ, and we have given him and made for him a light that he walks amongst the people with. So that nur of hikmah that some people are given, they walk amongst the people. Everyone else is confused. They don't know what to do. But this person knows what to do because he knows the mabda, he knows the origin, he knows the destination, he knows where he's supposed to go. He knows the purpose of life. He knows the medium. Therefore, day and day, he is going towards this spiritual journey that he has to reach his completion. But others, they don't know what they're doing. They're walking in circles, or sometimes regressing, na'udhu billah. And they're either maghboon, therefore, or mal'oon. They're either cursed because they're regressing, or they're maghboon, they're lost. They've been cheated because their day is the same as the day before. But that person that is walking and has life, فَأَحْيَيْنَاهُ وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُ نُورًا يَمْشِي, has light and has that heart that has light, that with hikmah, you can give your heart, inshallah, more light, and that is that knowledge that that's an applicable knowledge that you have, and you have calls. You can say that knowledge gives yourself a wisdom that you know what to do and what not to do, and you practice that, inshallah. So today, to summarize, we learned about four pieces of advice. Inshallah, we can practice it, and I give this advice to myself, foremost to myself. أحيي قلبك بالموعظة, and live in your heart with advice, with admonition. Surround yourself, either that advice is Quran, Hadith, you're from your brothers, good brothers, or it's from yourself. Give life to your heart again with advice. Don't separate yourselves from Islamic teachings. Surround yourself with Islamic teachings. وَأَمِتْهُ بِالزَّهَادَةِ, kill also your heart. Kill it with asceticism. Disattach yourself from the world. This is, and I'm telling myself, from your love of material things, especially the foremost is that love of haram, or that inclinations that are haram, and those inclinations that not allow you to do your wajibat and your obligations. وَقَوِّهِ بِالْيَقِينِ, and strengthen your heart. Have a very strong heart with yaqeen, and with those teachings that come from, that are certain. Increase your Islamic literacy, and your heart will become strong, inshallah. وَنَوِّرْهُ بِالْحِكْمَةِ, and enlighten it with wisdom, with that practical instructions that you have, that practical knowledge that you have, that's going to cause you to be able to know what to do in life, and you won't be confused anymore. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Because we want these actions, inshallah, it is the night of Friday, to have an effect on us. We really want, it's easy hearing these instructions, but very difficult to practice them. And I'm giving this advice to myself. It's okay to have wa'adun min nafs. It's okay if somebody, I remember our teacher, Sheikh Ahmad al-Mushtair, said, when you speak, also give a speech for yourself. You go on the minbar, give a minbar to yourself. And what's the problem with speaking and speaking to oneself at the same time? if you want this food, this maw'idah to have an effect on you, brothers and sisters, remember the salt. This is from my teacher, Sheikh Ahmad al-Mashri. The salt of the food is that crying for Ahl al-Bayt at the end. That gives a taste. That will make your meal complete. If you want this food to become nur and night, mention Ahl al-Bayt, and while you're crying, at the same time, ask Imam Ali, ask Lady Fatima, to allow me to apply, because you are hearing this speech from Imam Ali that really truly applied. And I ask you to imagine you're hearing these words from Imam Ali, not from me. You're hearing it from Imam Ali that actually applied these words in his life 100%. Brothers and sisters, that vision that Lady Fatima, Sayyidah Fatima, alayhi salam, had is a vision, is a worldview that's much different than any of us can fathom. First of all, one of her names is Radiyah. She's Mardiyah. She is satisfied with the Lord. And that is one of the highest things. If you ask anybody, is there anything more important than the satisfaction of God? If I ask you this, what could you say? Is there anything more important? If you had the entire world, but God was dissatisfied with you, would it be worth it? No. So our goal is to go back to our Lord, Radiyat and Mardiyah, so the Quran has. And these are the names of Az-Zahra, to be satisfied with the Lord. And for you to be satisfied with your Lord as well. For him to be satisfied, and you're satisfied with him, what happens to you. That's a great position. Is there a higher position than this? Is there a higher position than your Lord being satisfied and you being satisfied? Yes, there is. And that is the position of Lady Fatima. That you reach such a high position, and it's amazing when you hear this, that God's satisfaction, that you become the criterion for God's satisfaction. You reach such a high position that whatever you like, God likes, is approved of. Whatever you dislike, God dislikes, because your will and Allah's is the same. This is the position in the hadith from Lady Fatima, that Allah is angry, or the Prophet of Islam is angry, that Allah is angered with her anger and is pleased with whoever she is pleased of. Allahu Akbar. So with this vision that Lady Fatima had, with this view that she had, in this position, look at what happens with one of the visitations while she's injured, while she is sick, and they come to visit her. Ladies from the Ansar came to visit her. And also, privately, we have a meeting. We have a meeting from Salama, one of the good wives of the Prophet of Islam. And we have in the hadith that she comes to Lady Fatima. دخلت from Manaqib ibn Shahr Ashub. دخلت Salama ala Fatima, a defender of Ahl al-Bayt, defender of Imam Ali later on. She defends Imam Ali and writes letters for his defense. And asks, فقالت لها كيف أصبحت عن ليلتك يا بنت رسول الله? How was your night? How did your night become morning? And she answers, قالت أصبحت بين كمد وكرب. My night became morning with bala, because of difficulties. If it's us, what difficulties would we have? If somebody asked us, and our ribs were broken, and our hands were injured, and our face was hit, we would say, I had a difficult night. I couldn't sleep last night. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't sleep to one side. This is how we would answer. This would be our kamad and our karb. This would be our difficulty. If a mother loses her child, and her child is miscarried, this would be her kamad and karb, that she has just lost Muhsin. But what does Lady Fatima say? What is her calamity? What caused her night very difficulty turn into the morning? She says these two words, Faqd al-Nabi, the separation of the Prophet, wa dhulm al-wasi, and the oppression of the wasi, the oppression of the successor. This is Lady Fatima's entire strife, and this is her life, that she stood up for messengership, for prophethood, and she stood up for the correct successor. She misses her father, Rasulullah, and misses the instruction and advice of the Holy Prophet of Islam. She misses that status that Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam had when the Prophet was alive, and what happened to them after he passed away. And secondly, dhulm al-wasi, that oppression that they gave to Imam Ali, how they oppressed Imam Ali. Then she says this, how in a very articulate way, Hutika wallah hijabu. Hutika wallah hijaba. I swear by Allah that his hijab, Hutika wallah hijabu, that his hijab was dishonored. Not that I was dishonored. That Imam Ali, she refers this to the dhulm of Imam Ali, that Imam Ali's hijab and his wife was now dishonored. Sallallahu alayki ya Fatima Zahra Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen. We ask Allah, inshallah, to give us, inshallah, shafa'at of Lady Fatima Zahra, to cure all the sick because of Lady Fatima Zahra, to give us, inshallah, that vision that Lady Fatima had, and that we can give life to our hearts with mu'adah, inshallah, and to kill our desires in our hearts with zahada, with asceticism, and to strengthen our heart with yaqeen, and to give light, inshallah, to our hearts with hikmah. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ajjallahu ta'ala faraj Imam Zaman, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.